Alright, in today's video I'm going to show how to create dynamic links to related content in SharePoint. So some of you are going to have some familiarity with this already, but if you don't, let's go through the basics. What is related content? So essentially in our scenario here, we're going to have a sales site with a list of clients. Also in that site, we're going to have a list of meetings and a document library, which are going to contain documents related to specific clients. So the meetings will be related to clients, the documents will be related to clients. How do we relate that content? Let's jump over to SharePoint and take a look at that directly. The short answer is we're doing that with a lookup column. So this is our clients list. So you can see we have 7 clients right now. If I go into the client meetings list, you'll see I have some data here and I have a column here called client. This is a lookup column. So when you add a lookup column to a list or library in SharePoint, it's sort of like a choice column that gets its data from another list or library in the same site. So if I scroll over and click add column and scroll down to lookup, and then click next, it'll ask you to give it a name. I'll just call this test, and then select the list it's going to be the source of the data, so I'll select clients, and then what column from that, and we'll just use title, which is the name of the client or the title column in that list, and then click save. Now in our case we already have a column, so let me just delete this real quick. So we don't need another column there for client because we have our client column already. So that's how you add that lookup column. And you'll notice that this is, when you select the client there, it's a hyperlink because this is actually a link to that client. And in this case, I'm also bringing over, which is an option when you add a lookup column, you can bring over additional columns. So I'm bringing over the client, the contact name and contact email, just because if I'm looking at the meetings list and I want to be able to know who I need to contact at the client, I don't want to have to follow through. I can get that information right here. Now in the client documents, same idea. It's just a client column, which is a lookup, and if I were to click on this, it's actually going to take me to that particular item in the list, which is not super helpful, but that's another matter for another day. The point is that I have these two lists, meetings and documents, client documents, which have that client column, and I could then within that list or this library create a filtered view. So I can filter this library to show me only things for the leftorium, and there we go. There are the 3 documents for the leftorium. Now that's pretty cool, and that's great. If you have a small number of contacts, or a small number of clients rather, you could create a filtered view, and then I could save this view as leftorium documents. But when you get beyond, a dozen or so clients, it's going to be kind of awkward and cumbersome to keep creating new views, and you will eventually run in, there is a limit to the number of views that you can create in a list or library. So when we talk about creating dynamic links, we're basically going to provide a way to get to a filtered view like this without defining a view, but rather building that URL that's needed to get to that filtered view dynamically using a calculated column. So I'm going to go over to my clients list here, and I need to add a calculated column to bring in the meetings for this particular client. And click add column, and you'll notice that calculated is not here. So you need to go all the way to the bottom and say see all column types. Select that and click next, and that will take you to the classic column creation experience. So in here I'm going to call this meetings and make that a calculated column. And for right now I'm just going to put equals and then 2 double quotes. That will basically just be a placeholder. It'll be a blank value for right now, but just want to create the column just so we know how to create that. And this did it again. Let me just go back and try that one more time. All right, SharePoint has been acting up a little bit on me today. Let me see. I think it actually probably did create it. Yes, it did create it. There's just something going on with my developer tenant, but it's acting a little weird. But we have our calculated column called meetings. Now, what I want to do is go over to our client meetings list. So I'm going to open that in a new tab. So this is where we want to talk about how the URL, or how SharePoint actually does filtering, and how you can see that in the URL for that's generated for that filtered view. So I'm here in my client meetings library. Or list rather, if I filter this by client, so client, filter by, and select the leftorium and apply that, you'll see that now I'm seeing just items for or meetings with the leftorium. But if I look in the URL, now before we did anything, our view or URL was just client meetings all items.aspx. Now that we've applied a filter, we've got this question mark filter field 1. So it's basically saying that you're filtering on the field called client, and the value that you're filtering is the leftorium, and the type of that filter, or the type of that column rather, is a lookup. So essentially this is the magic. This is how SharePoint is filtering that view, or generating the URL to give you that filtered view. Now here's the cool thing. We can hack this apart. We can do a little URL hacking and repurpose the bits and pieces here. So let me highlight this whole thing. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go over to my favorite text editor, Notepad++, paste it all in there. All right, so basically we need this whole URL, but what we want to make dynamic is the filter value. So I'm just going to highlight the name, the value that's in that filter value section. So after filter value equals and before the next ampersand. And then I'm just going to put in a couple of pipes there. That's just a character that's not typically in a URL that's going to allow me to easily see where that is. So no other reason. You can use whatever characters you want there, or you could even just put space, space there. It's entirely up to you. But the point is that I want to use that calculated column to concatenate our, I'm going to call this the base URL, the filter value that's in that space that we left there, and then the last piece of the URL so that it knows what kind of column that is that it's filtering. So let me just grab the first chunk here, just highlight that and copy it. And in our list settings here, in our meetings column, our formula, we're going to use concatenate. And if you've used this before in Excel, it does the same thing here. It basically sticks together chunks of text or values. So in this case, we're going to concatenate and then an open double quote, paste in what we've got there from that base URL, another double quote, and then a comma. So basically we're saying take this piece of text, and now we're going to give it a dynamic value, which is title. That's the name of our client. And then another comma and another quote. Now we need to get the tail end of that URL, so that and filter type equals lookup. All right, easy enough. So copy that, paste that in, close out the parenthesis, and click OK. And something went wrong. Let me just double check. Did I forget any quotes? Oh, I did. I forgot a double quote before that closing parenthesis. There we go. All right, so it's important to check your punctuation. Now, that's great. We now have this URL, but it's not clickable, and it's also this big, ugly URL. So what can we do about that? What can we do to make this a little bit better user experience for the people who are going to be using this site? Well, we could tell them just highlight that, copy and paste it, or we could use a little JSON formatting to make this look a little bit nicer. So basically give them a nice little icon there to get to that filtered view. And I'm going to do that. I actually already have the JSON put together here. This is a very simple bit of JSON code. I'll include it in the description of the video. But basically what we're doing is we're creating an element, a button element in that column. And within that button, we are creating a hyperlink or an anchor tag, anchor, whatever you want to call it, anchor element, I guess. And then within that, we're using an icon name, a fluent icon name called CalendarAgenda. Because an anchor is a hyperlink, it has an href or reference, the URL to go to, and we're just going to take the current field value. At current field means whatever is in that field. So the calculation, the formula is going to create the URL for us. This is going to give us a nice, pretty icon to link to that. And then we also have a target property here, or attribute, which basically means _blank means open it in a new window. So that's just to kind of explain. I won't explain all the other pieces here. I'll just say I'm going to copy that over, and we're going to format this column. Let me just refresh just to be sure this works the first time. Format this column. You have to go to advanced mode, remove whatever is there, and then Control-V to paste that in. Hit save, and voila, we have a nice little icon there, which when you click on it will take you to the filtered view of that meetings list filtered to that client. So that's pretty cool. Now, if there was someone who maybe didn't have a meeting scheduled, so I don't think there is one. Let me just clear the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm not sure which one of our clients does not have a meeting. So that's one of the problems with this, is that there's no condition. So if there isn't a meeting scheduled for someone, so we don't have a meeting scheduled right now for, which one is it? Okay, so we don't have a meeting scheduled right now with Stark Industries. So basically you'll get this view that says there's nothing here because it's applying a filter, but the filter results are 0. So there's nothing to show. That's not the end of the world. It's just letting you know there's no meetings right now with Stark Industries or on the schedule. So that's the simple one. Now let's do the same thing with the documents, because we also want to be able to see those documents. So again, we're going to add another column. Go down to all column types, and I'll call this documents. Same idea, calculated. This time we'll just go in and create get the URL that we need. So again, we're going to go to our document library, which is the URL is just all items, and filter this to, let's say, Stark Industries. All right, so there we go. This is our URL. So let me just highlight this, copy it, paste it into here. All right, so again, we've got all items, filter field, client, filter value. So we want to take out Stark Industries. There we go. So again, we're left with the root URL, so copy that. And in our formula, again, will be equal, concatenate, open paren, quote, paste, quote, comma, plug in that title, and again, comma, quote, and then we need to go back to my text editor and get the tail end of that URL. Again, copy that. paste it, closing quote, closing parenthesis. Okay. Try that again. Yeah, something is going weird, but I think it actually saved that. So let me just go back to settings and documents, and it did save it all correctly. It's just being weird today for some reason. So let me cancel out of that. So now we have our clients. Again, we have the documents, and I have another handy dandy chunk of JSON here to basically, it's the same JSON. All I'm doing is changing the icon name. So now we're using the document set icon, and the hover text or the tooltip will be client documents instead of meetings. So I'll just copy that, and we can format this column. Paste it in there, hit save, and there we go. So now when we click on, again, Spacely, we'll see those are the Spacely documents. So nothing too exciting, too fancy, but just something that a lot of people didn't know you could do. Basically, the filter URL, or the URL that's created when you filter a list or a library using those, the column headings or the filter pane, is going to generate a URL that you can then repurpose and make into, use as the basis for calculating the URL to get you a specific, filter based on this title column in this list. Now, technically, you can also build that URL in the JSON formatting. There you'll see probably some other examples and demos of how to do that, and that's absolutely a valid way to do it. The reason that I prefer doing it in a calculated column or using a calculated column is that this JSON formatting is being rendered client-side. So there could be a scenario where maybe they have a slow connection or something happens, but the point is they might not, this pretty icon might not load. And if you were strictly using the formatting to build that URL, then they're just going to see a blank column. This way, if there was something happening that prevented the JSON from rendering, at least they have that URL, because that's just a calculated value. So to me, it's a little bit more, durable in that sense, because it doesn't rely on the icon rendering for them to actually see the URL. And in worst case scenario, they can copy and paste it. But that's all I wanted to show today. Just wanted to let people know this is possible. I've done this on a bunch of projects now, and it actually works out pretty well. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, again, because you don't really know, like, you can't conditionally hide this only if there are current meetings. There are other ways you can do that, but not using the simple method that I'm showing here. But still, this is something that I think a lot of people would find useful once they know that it's possible and know that it's available. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If so, leave a comment down below, and have a great day.